bank in the cloud. Hopefully I'm going to learn as much as the audience about what bank in the cloud is. But first, I'd love for each one of you to introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, and then we'll dive into the conversation.
Me first?
Yeah.
Okay, I am Paul Taylor. I'm founder and CEO of Thought Machine. So Thought Machine builds and sells cloud-native core banking engines. So what does that mean? It's pretty simple. So we are a cloud-native pure tech company. We don't sell into any other platforms. And core banking means that we sell the core infrastructure of the bank, what runs the products, what runs the ledgers, and what runs the ecosystem of the bank. We're a B2B company. We sell to other banks. And typically, we sell internationally, tier 1, tier 2 banks, and challenger banks.
My name is Eugene Danilkis. I'm co-founder and CEO of Mambu. So Mambu is a SaaS banking platform. We work with everything from tier 1 banks to telcos and fintechs to provide them a platform where they can design and service pretty much any financial products and do that in a modern way with developer tools to enable them to build something that's modern and evolving.
Good morning. My name is Max Chuard. I'm the CEO of Temenos. Temenos, over the last 25 years, I've been supporting banks to transform. We've got over 3,000 banks worldwide using our software, to the largest, most sophisticated banks, to digital neobanks, as much as local vendors. Temenos is all about innovation. We invest 20% of our R&D in the product. To put that in perspective, over the next 3 years, this will be around $1 billion of investment that goes into the product. We invest in 2 very specific areas. First, functionality, to build the best and deepest, richest banking functionality, and at the same time, in advanced technology, to be able to have cloud-native, cloud-agnostic, APIs-first, serve as microservices. So that's right with what we do. Ultimately, we are very proud that our banks, our customers, are the best-performing banks, achieving cost-to-income ratio of around 27%, which is quite amazing. I'm very pleased to be here to talk about banking in the cloud, because the last few years we've seen explosive growth in cloud in our business.
All right. So 3 software providers that sell to banks, 1 more established than the other 2, and 2 that are going towards being more established. Probably not selling to the same banks, or maybe you're selling to the same banks. I don't know. There's probably a lot of segmentation. But I have to admit that the bank in the cloud, I've inherited that term from the organizers. So they probably had something in mind when they said bank in the cloud instead of like SaaS or bank as a service. Bank in the cloud for me is a bit of a new term. I know about indeed SaaS, marketplaces, API banking. So I'd love for each one of you to kind of launch us into your definition or your flavor of what exactly that is and how it's germane to that future that you're selling to those clients of yours.
Shall I start? Yeah.
Yeah.
So cloud computing certainly isn't anything new and is well established. It was basically invented by the large tech giants, particularly Amazon and particularly Google. And everything you've been running on Amazon and everything you've been running in Google for the last 20 years has been on their data centers. And what happened was they decided to open that up to other people and provide platform as a service, and that became known as the cloud. But it is actually quite an established, rich technology and quite mature. And nearly everything that you run in the world, it doesn't matter if it's Netflix, it doesn't matter if it's social media, it doesn't matter if it's email, nearly everything runs in the cloud. The one exception is the financial service industry that basically is new to the cloud, or to be a little bit blunt, slow to the cloud. So what a bank in the cloud is it is just saying, why do we not build banks the way that the best practice of the rest of the world does technology? Banks have found themselves in a terrible problem of legacy technology, some better than others, but in the most pathological cases, they are on-prem solutions, they use mainframe, they use programming languages, they have obsolete systems which they do not know how to work, do not know how to upgrade and control. And what the cloud does, it provides a way of them solving the fundamental problems that plague them. The huge budgets on IT, the huge amount of spend just to keep where you are. But in terms of the end users, we have security, we have flexibility, and of course we have cost. So the Bank in the Cloud program is basically about doing that. Now I'll just say, so that's mostly about the cloud. when we say the word bank, most of us know what the word bank is. There has been a lot of progress of fintech deploying into the cloud. And of course, we had Revolut last night, which is a very successful B2C challenger bank in the cloud. However, we're still got a way to go to get all of the bank into the cloud, including all the corporate banking, all the SME banking and everything else. So we're at the start of a journey. It's very exciting. But I think the size of the enterprise is huge in terms of banks and end customers.
I think, Paul, what he said is totally right. I think the cloud is not new. I mean, we had our first customer. I think we were the first one in the industry to put a bank in the cloud. That was in 2011. I think what is exciting is how the customer is looking at cloud differently, how cloud is becoming an enabler for new business model. I think that's very exciting. And we see really cloud as a way to differentiate, as a way to offer different type of models for banks. And ultimately, for me, cloud, banking in the cloud, it's all about innovation that this can bring to the industry.
I was listening to your panel that you were moderating yesterday when you asked what the most impactful technology would be, and all the 4 panelists answered AI, and then I think you disagreed with them and said cloud. But I think the reason they did that is because cloud is now for technologists, which actually all of the panelists were, from Bank and others. Cloud is sort of just a given. You might as well have asked them what's the impact of mobile phones, which would have been relevant to this question in 2009, or what's the impact of electricity, is just kind of given because capabilities like AI are only possible because of cloud. And so the reason that it's so impactful is that people have moved away from thinking about cloud as infrastructure, which is exactly what you defined, which is how it came about to be. And now they're looking and thinking of cloud in terms of applications and capabilities. And how can they leverage services which are sitting on the cloud infrastructure to allow them to be agile, to move quickly, to put together different pieces of technology, and to put together a compelling proposition to customers. So a lot of the thinking I think that's happening in the industry now is not about cloud as an infrastructure level in terms of where are the servers and is it by AWS or Azure or by Oracle. I think that's kind of just the bare minimum bones necessary to play in the market. It has to be secure, it has to be scalable, et cetera, but that's not interesting anymore. What's interesting is the capabilities built on top of it, and that's why for us it's such important to focus on the software as a service, which is talking about the capabilities you can offer on top of cloud, and how that enables organizations to be much more agile and to be able to compete in a much faster changing tech landscape.
I want to make sure that there's like 2 points that I may be confused with, so you're going to have to help me. On what the 3 of you just said, it seems that it's not so much that you're providing that software in the cloud, is that you're enabling banks to operate in the cloud. So it's much more than infrastructure. Is that like, I think that's what you just said?
It's about the fact that cloud as an infrastructure with the right applications on top of it enables fundamentally different capabilities and different ways of working. As a simple example is if you have the right sort of stack that's running in the cloud, you can seamlessly receive new software updates, new changes, new releases, new capabilities to you as an organization, and you can receive that on a daily basis and it not be disruptive to your business. So that's a capability that's offered by cloud, and using cloud as a big cloud in terms of infrastructure and the right applications to enable organizations to have access to capabilities and the latest functionalities on a daily basis with seamless changes, as opposed to a traditional model, which would mean if you have some new capabilities, it gets deployed every 6-12 months, and that process is massively disruptive and potentially dangerous to your business.
Yeah, could I just add to that? So I agree. The physical hosting of the system in a data center run by one of the cloud providers is important, but it is not the most important thing. The next most important thing is what we call cloud native, and that is building the application specifically for the cloud. Now, I won't give a long presentation about cloud native, but for example, having an orchestration system like Kubernetes allows you to do safe and live updates of the software while everything's running and without any downtime to the user. With a good cloud-native solution, you can build copies of the bank and test the whole thing offline. But I think the most important thing is to have a deployment mechanism into the cloud. The best companies, so I will declare, I used to work for Google. I was a software engineer for Google for many years. I saw it all from the inside, and it is pretty amazing. So, but the best way is to create your company so that it has a tech stack and a delivery mechanism that is cloud native, and then that is pushing into the cloud. And as you say, you can do quick updates at a regular, you can operate software as a service, and you can make sure that and the most important things are that all the automation and all these tools in the cloud save you time and save you money. That time saving in time and money can then be deployed on what a lot of the banks want to do, which is the AI, the great customer experience and things. Banks currently just spend so much of their time keeping the system going, and that's why the innovation, they find it so difficult to launch the innovation. So if you get the cloud foundation there, it frees up the rest of the organization to do the kind of cooler stuff.
Yeah, I think cloud native definitely is very important, and we see more and more of our customers exactly asking for that. I think as well what is important is being cloud agnostic. The fact that the ability to be multi-cloud resilient, the ability to run your software on different cloud providers. Clearly today you've got 3 main cloud providers. How can you offer that resilience by having 2 of them to be able to offer what we call active-active, which means that if one of the providers fails, there is no downtime. And I think that's very, very interesting. And from a security and from a resilience point of view, it's really game-changing. And for us, that has been very important as well, and as well for our customers.
All right, but we've established there's one part which is operational efficiencies, right? That's kind of like the table stakes. And then there's another part which is probably much more strategic, which is like enabling some business transformation for your clients to be really in the cloud natives, doing business in a different way. And you use, I think it's an interesting word, you use agnosticism, but you applied it to, one second, you applied it to cloud infrastructure. Right?
Exactly.
It seems to me that the bigger your client is in terms of business lines, geographic markets, the more you have to be, each one of you, sophisticated and agnostic in presenting solutions that are going to work in heterogeneous markets, ecosystems, because different regulation, because different compliance, because different laws, because different cloud infrastructure providers. So that's a very daunting task. I understand that that back in the cloud, target is huge for those clients of yours, but yours is like a very complex business then.
It depends. I mean, I've been doing cloud computing technology for 10 years and most of my team. So, I mean, we would find it very difficult to do an on-prem solution because that's not what we're experiencing. But for example, I mentioned Kubernetes, the systems like that allows you to deploy exactly the same software in Amazon and Google and Azure. I talk about Terraform, which allows you to configure these systems. And I mean, there is certainly a battle going, but absolutely, you can not go to a very large bank and say we can only do it on Google or we can only do it on Amazon. They would get nervous about that. But of course, if you decide to be cloud agnostic when you build your system, there are many, many other people who face the same problem. And the one thing you didn't say is sometimes data centers aren't in the country that you're selling to, so you have to go to whoever locally provides it. So that does create extra resilience. It also prevents vendor lock-in, which is, again, one of the things that really plagues the IT. They get locked into a particular vendor, so it gives them a bit more power in the market, yeah.
Yeah, I think the largest customers, the largest banks, and as well the regulator, is pushing for that agnosticity. We just announced this morning our partnership with Google on a global basis to be the first one to run on Answers, which is on the Google Cloud Platform Answers. And that's very, very exciting as well, what they do from an hybrid or multi-cloud capabilities. So it is going that direction. But I think from a business point of view, what is interesting about cloud is enabling new models. And I think we see more and more new models in the market. We see the industry moving towards distributions, towards manufacturing of products, and cloud is enabling that. I think that's very exciting.
I think if I understood your comment, though, it was about agnosticity towards the different types of customers you have, right? So if you look at the models of pure play SaaS providers like Salesforce and NetSuite, and they have one application which we as Mambu use, and then I'm sure that the largest organizations use Salesforce as well. And they're all running on the same application fundamentally. They're all reusing Salesforce. So whenever we get new capabilities out of Salesforce, the same thing happens to the largest organizations in the world and the largest governments that use them as well. So I think that's one of the benefits of, again, this is really talking about the pure SaaS play, where effectively if all of your customers around the world, whether it's a neobank in the US or it's a lender in Australia or anything, or a mortgage provider in the UK, if they're all running on the same platform, you have massive benefits as an organization for product innovation, because you're able to, first of all, if you identify any issues, no matter where they pop up, you can solve it, and you solve it for everyone, but also ideas that come from the different customers for how you can improve the product and platform. If you, from a product management perspective, can integrate that better into your platform and then release that back to everybody, then effectively you're taking your whole entire customer base as an innovation base and allowing you to funnel that into that one platform. So it's definitely a challenge for an organization, because of course you have different customers with different needs, but I think that's what a lot of the most successful, like I said, Salesforce, NetSuite, all those successful SaaS companies do. And as a result, their entire customer pool benefits out of being part of that community effectively.
I think, we are talking about cloud, and clearly we see cloud as being the future here, but I think it will be wrong at the same time to only deploy on cloud. I think, to be able to deploy on-prem, to have hybrid deployment on-prem, on the cloud, on a SaaS basis, this is also very important for the industry. I think, we all want here to transform the industry, because still banks, are using legacy systems from, 40 years ago and so on. We want to transform that, but that transformation will take some time, and hence only to have the cloud option deployment will not be enough. You need to be able to offer different ways to deploy the customer.
Yeah, I think the large cloud providers are aware of this problem, and when they first a few years ago started actively selling into the financial services industry, they thought all the solutions they would do. But absolutely, their hybrid solutions are coming. IBM, Google now offer cloud orchestration layers that allow you to keep some data on-prem. And we have conversations where, for example, PII, or customer management data, is on-prem. There isn't really any good technical reason why that. It's not a benefit. It's just a step-by-step approach that allows the bank to get to the future state. When we talk to banks, they are very convinced that we do a very, very convincing explanation of what the future state looks like and the benefits. And there's nothing about being in the cloud that is a trade-off from being on-prem. The issue is, how do you get there? And if you have, and I think there's now a developing ecosystem that's going to help banks step by step, stage by stage, get off the legacy technology and do it in a way that manages their risk, manages their perceived risk and the actual risk of deployment. So I think that's a good benefit for everyone.
It dawns on me as I'm listening to you that the space that the three of you are in, right, selling banking software in the shape that you do to financial institutions, and namely banks, is bound to remain diverse, with many different providers. We only have 3 here, but there are many more out there, based on a couple of facts. Number one, there's a diversity of needs. Banks are not the same. They have all kinds of different needs in terms of the banking systems that they use. They also want customization, and in one market they want this, and in another market they want that, and so on and so forth. And then second, a legislator or a regulator wants diversity. They don't want a forest with only one type of tree. So you probably have a bright future without market concentration and a winner takes all at that layer where you're positioning yourself.
Yes.
Maybe in cloud infrastructure, but not where you are. Is that correct?
Yes and no. I wouldn't confuse two things. I mean, no one who is a consumer or purchaser in industry wants a monopoly, right? So we all agree that, the regulators agree that, and the banks agree that, but that's completely different from saying that the needs, the technical needs of what they want are so different that throws up a plethora of different companies. At a foundational layer, at an infrastructure layer, all banks pretty much want the same thing. They want security, they want resilience, they want something that's economical, they want something that's run the ledgers, run the product, do the payment systems, do all the customer management. So if you abstract the system at the right layer, you can have a single platform, and that platform can do multiple banks. Now, on top of that, then you want to do user experience, and you want to build all customized products for the banks. But I would, if you do the abstraction carefully, you can build a universal system for most banks. Now, and Thought Machine, we often portray ourselves as saying we are the layer above the cloud. We are going to be the next platform layer, and on top of that, then the banks can build their own custom software.
Eugene and Max, do you agree with the?
I think in general, I don't think it's a winner-take-all sort of market, if that's what you're kind of alluding to, right? I mean, there's very few markets or examples of anything in B2B where you have really a monopoly like you have with Facebook. There's almost zero examples. Even if we talk about a leading provider like Salesforce, then there's still hundreds of thousands of different CRM providers. Of course, Salesforce is by far the biggest ones. And if you start looking at different geographies, then again, there's other winners there. So the diversity of financial services, which is even broader than just banking in terms of how they operate, how they make the decisions, their technology preferences, their geographical preferences. We're talking about this on a global scale, so it's very unlikely that you have a winner-take-all sort of market. It hasn't really happened in the past, and I don't see any indications that that will happen in the future. But as you said, I think there's a chance that you will have a smaller set of global providers and platforms which are preferred, like a little bit like you have right now in cloud, where you basically just have really 3 or maybe 2.5 sometimes. But that's at the infrastructure level, right? Once you start moving to the application levels, a whole different levels of decision elements that come into the decision-making process of an organization of who they want to work with and why. And then you have a lot of diversity in that market.
Okay, I will have a slightly different view myself. I do believe that size matters. And the fact, as I said, the next 3 years we will invest probably $1 billion in development. You know, somehow it's difficult for the smaller players to catch up on that side. I think credibility and references is very important in our business, and having 3,000 banks on a global basis running on our application does give more credibility, more support for the banks, which are going to make a major decision to move from in-house legacy build to something new. And that credibility is very important, that those references are extremely important. So I do believe that you will have some niche players, but I do see that you will have a vendor that will have scale, that will have size, and will be able to capture a larger part of the market.
And do you agree with what Paul said earlier, which was, I think that I can build like a banking system or a set of banking systems that are going to cover pretty much all the needs, and then there might be some customization on certain things, or?
Listen, banking is also very complex on a country-by-country basis. And I think that's the complexity of, you've got the technology on one hand, but then you've got the different regulation in each country, you've got the different functionalities in different countries, which is quite specific. I think this is where, to be a global vendor has complexities of the investment that is required to be able to scale. We've got customers in 150 countries today, and we are able to support customers in 150 countries with local model banks, with local regulation, with local compliance, which is more difficult if you don't have scale. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I would just like to, so I'll agree and disagree with your previous point. So I think credibility and experience are absolutely essential, but credibility and experience of what? At Thought Machine, we are a cloud-native company. I used to work for Google, my CTO used to work for Google, my chief infrastructure officer used to work for Google, the senior management, all the tech stack is built on cloud native from the ground up. And we have deployed systems from our collective experience vastly bigger than any bank, text-to-speech system, AdSense Exchange and so on. So our credibility and our reference sites is built on being cloud native from the scratch. We have never built anything to do with the legacy infrastructure, and we've never built kind of the problem that we're trying to solve. We're, of course, and Thought Machine have now got lots of SMEs in the banking experience who bring in the specialist knowledge about how to configure the banking products, but our credibility comes from no ifs, no buts. We're a cloud-native company.
You wanted to say something? No?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think the one way that you can tackle the challenge of complexity, because it's a complex market and you're trying to do things in a lot of different geographies, is by focus. So by focusing on what capabilities you think you can be best in the world in and focusing on building those out and then leveraging other technology providers through integrations and through partnerships, that's how you can actually build something that's global. If you try to do everything for everybody on a global scale, then you're really trying to take over and conquer the world. But if you take a bit of a focused approach, then you can actually do that. And again, I'll use Salesforce as an example because I think everyone's quite familiar with it. Salesforce is global, but if you look, they have a very successful and active marketplace where they have other solutions built on top of it by other providers, and then you can plug them in because they can't be the best in everything. Sometimes you see them buying a company here and there, but even then it's usually about enabling that ecosystem approach, because even a company the size of Salesforce, the scale of Salesforce, which is an order of magnitude bigger than all of us combined, know they can't be the best in the world at absolutely everything in the different spaces they play in. So I think that focus is critical.
We have 2-3 minutes. I'd love to get to entertain a couple of questions from the audience. And all right, okay. Let me jumpstart here with a microphone.
Thank you. How do you cope with the event that most of the times financial services require on-soil requirements?
What, sorry?
On-soil requirements, for instance, the fact that the data has to remain in a certain geography.
The world is changing, and it is an ecosystem of consumers, banks, and regulators. So I guess I speak for most of us that the regulators are moving and the regulations are changing. In the UK, which is where I come from, Mark Carney and the PRA say they are pro-cloud, and they're not even neutral. They want it because they believe the security and the resilience. So those regulations are disappearing. It varies from region to region, but many of the regions we're selling in, the regulator basically says, if it's safe and it works, you're fine. So they look at those top-level answers rather than the specifics of how to do it.
Yeah, I think definitely the regulator we've seen over the years have really supported our moving to other clouds. I think that's totally a fair comment. And when we started 10 years ago, we were struggling to explain the benefit of cloud. Today, some of the country will, the government, the regulator will use cloud themselves, so they are fully on board on that. And that's why I do believe that the future is in the cloud.
I think that there was another question. This gentleman over there.
Thank you very much. My name is Christopher Brennan from Checkmark Cybersecurity. We've spoken this morning a lot between the transition from traditional banking to, let's call it cloud banking. The traditional banks have been more and more focused on cybersecurity, trying to keep their hackers out and their customers safe. I found it surprising, with the exception of Mambu, who is our customer, I found it surprising that not so much discussion has taken place regarding security, because all of you are basically software companies with a banking license or software companies with some form of a license, and security doesn't seem to be a topic for you guys, with the exception of Mambu.
Listen, I think we probably did not discuss security because it's a given, that
but
security is a given. You've got to be able to provide a secure environment. And for me, what I discussed before, I think where I'm moving the discussion is towards more how to ensure that your secure environment, if there is, what is a contingency plan if something happens, and this is where I was moving towards the multi-cloud resilience impact of it. But definitely security has to be part of it. There is no way, and the bank is ultimately liable for the customers. Even if they move it to a third party like us on a SaaS basis, the bank is still on the hook all the time. And the level of due diligence performed by the banks and the largest banks that are customers of Temenos in some cases is huge. You cannot pass, the door if your system, the environment is not secure. And I think that's why we did not go into that detail.
Yeah, could I just give it?
I want one last question. Maybe you can take it.
All right, but I can really give a proper answer to that. There are a whole raft of things you do in security. For example, security encryption, security and rest. But for a cloud-native solution to pass a security test, the bar that we set is the hacker has physical access to the machines they're trying to hack, and they still can't break it. It is orders of magnitude more secure than any traditional bank. So, if you do it properly, it is very, very safe.
Unplug the cloud, and then you get security. One last question. A quick one. Anyone? All right, well, I would like you to join me in thanking our panelists. Really like this panel.